Good morning, everyone. It's February 14th, Valentine's Day.
Happy birthday, Mom.
Yeah, happy birthday, Mom. It's 9:15 in the morning. Corey and I finished breakfast a little while ago. We're drinking some tea now. But we've been asked to do a video that talks about how this trip came together. So we're going to get started on that. So a year and a half ago, Agassi Manukian and myself we're talking one day at breakfast at the USOEC, and I had mentioned that, it would just be so great to be able to go overseas and do a long duration trip in, a Russian country or a Baltic country, one of those types of countries that just really strong at Greco, really strong in their Greco heritage and everything. And he just said, that would be a great thing for you, and it would make all the difference in anyone who ever went and did that. So about a week later, he came up to me and he said, well, I talked to some of my colleagues back in Armenia, and he said that they would love to have you guys. And I was thrilled. He offered for us to stay in his apartment, which we are in now, and I was ecstatic. I remember texting Corey a bunch of times that day, with the news. And, as reality hit, I kind of was like, well, now it's time for us to get to work. We need to, the wrestling, we could take care of the wrestling when we're there. But it was the fundraising and the planning and passing us by the parents that was going to be the big challenge. So for the first part of a good year, nothing really happened other than we were building relationships with Agassi and with the coaches here in Armenia, and our parents, their relationship between our coaches, and really just talking about this trip, getting the ideas kind of down on paper. And then once our last semester at NMU started, that's when we were basically kind of hitting the details hard, and coming down to the last month, the last 2 months, we started really fundraising. We were working for every penny, going back to people who had supported us in the past, and just looking for support. So the last month was extremely hectic. I'm sure our parents hated us and we hated our parents, but we still loved them. But it was very hectic. It was very brain rattling. So I think, the rest is history, and I'll let Corey kind of describe a little bit in detail his thoughts.
Well, I wouldn't really describe it, just to kind of go off this, I wouldn't really describe it as I'd say we were more annoyed by our parents a lot of times, because we get asked a lot of the same questions, or we get asked questions that we felt were no-brainers, but I mean, they didn't know any better. So, sorry if we came off kind of rude, I guess. But yeah, so as Ryan mentioned, it kind of started from a spark of interest, and I know that in the fall of 2010, Dennis Hall and I had talked when I went down there on a trip to train with him for about a little under a week, and he'd always mention, he's always mentioned this guy, Agassi Manukian, and he'd always talked about how he'd always want to go to Armenia or go to Russia, somewhere that Agassi had connections, somewhere that, because Agassi had wrestled in the former Soviet Union, and then he later wrestled for Armenia, and then we came down on another trip to train with Dennis later in December and met Agassi, and then Ryan and I were tossed around the idea. We tossed around with Agassi, and it kind of went quiet for a while. Just kind of been something always in the back of our minds. And then, as Ryan mentioned, it was brought up. Agassi had brought it up, and then we kind of just, without even having to think about it, just said yes. That is what we want to do. And this trip we'd always kind of hit or miss for a while when we wanted to do it, and the timing, how long. We knew we wanted to do it for a while, but the issue was time. Um, and so it was kind of looked at as something to do in the summer, and it was possibly going to be like a month, 2 weeks. 2 weeks was something that we didn't want to do. We wanted it to be a month more. And then finally, kind of was sitting down one day and just sprang up, and it was like, well, Ryan and I are graduating, in a fall semester, so we'll be graduating in December, and why not spend our quote unquote winter semester overseas? And posed the idea to Ryan, and we posed it to Agassi, and we posed it to the parents, and then it just started to grow from there. And then from there, it just became we had to grow the connection. We had to grow some kind of indirect connection from here to Armenia. And then once that all started getting together, we started hashing out a small plan, kind of the basics. And then, as Ryan mentioned, once we got into August, then we had to get the details hammered out. And then once we got home, um, after graduation and even time before that, a lot of it was Ryan and I saved a lot of our money. Whenever we'd worked odds and end jobs, even over the summer, doing what we could to raise money. And then once we came home over break, did the same thing. Again, we started working with family and friends, and anybody else that we could find work. And then we said, we need to find more money. We really need to support ourselves in this trip. And so we looked to the individuals who always supported us, friends, family, and then once we looked at them, and we looked at other people who had supported us in the past for smaller trips like Fargo, and then we wrote out a donations letter, and then we came up with the idea of a website. We sought out our cousin Marty, who Ryan on our behalf, I'd like to thank you for everything you've done for us as being a guide and setting that all up for us. And really, showing us the ropes and continuing to. And then once we had the website, then it was like, we need a Flickr account, we need a YouTube account. And we had the website go, we had a donation letter, and then we got Wes, who took pictures for us, and just started getting people who started doing us favors, and we got this letter out, and we got donations going, and that's what fueled this dream that we've had, was all these donations and our supporters and our family and friends. And those are people who I'd like to turn to now and thank for all your support and supporting our dreams and supporting our ideas over the years and even recently. So you guys have been a big help, and your help is much appreciated.
Yeah, and kind of to end this video, I do want to thank the people as well who have supported us, and even in the past and in the present, who will support us in the future. And I'm not just saying the people who donated and everything. I'm talking about the people who support us, through the cutting weight sessions and everything else. And a big thanks to Agassi Manoukian, because allowing us to stay in his apartment here,
networking
and networking for us to really get this trip going. That was huge. I mean, the fact that we can stay in this apartment and not pay hotel bills or trying to find a host family to stay with, that's huge. It was a huge burden lifted from our shoulders. So an extreme huge thanks to Agassi Manoukian, and a big thanks to our parents and all of our supporters and our followers, our family, our friends, coaches and fans. So thank you again.